You're very welcome to lesson 4 of the Diploma in English for Business. And this is the lesson where we start on formal English for business writing. So it's part 1 of that. So every lesson is building on the previous lesson. And it's getting progressively harder. And you need to watch all the lessons live so that you understand it all connects, and you get ready for the big lessons in lessons 6, 7, and 8. So if you attend all the lessons live, it's going to make life easier as you're heading towards the second half and for the final exam, and indeed the Advanced Diploma in English for Business. So, of course, I'm Jennifer, your educator for English for Business, and here we go. So, as usual, in every lesson, you can be in with a chance to win $1,000. And what do you have to do? All you have to do is attend live. So guys, it's an absolutely fantastic prize just for attending live. And of course, the winners will be announced on Facebook on Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. UK time. So guys, if you've just joined, you're very, very welcome. I've literally just started, so you haven't missed too much. So guys, what did we do in lesson 3? Exactly, Abir, we looked at negotiations, exactly. So we learned about the art of negotiation. You also gained confidence and learned how to improve your ability to negotiate. I looked at language that would be useful for meetings involving negotiations and at different stages of the negotiations. So whether would be the start of that meeting, the middle part, or the end. So useful expressions for you. We also had great fun studying the conditional tenses, ranging from the first to the mixed conditionals. And of course, someone also asked me about even zero conditionals. So we really got stuck into them. People got very excited about the conditionals. We also had a look at an international case study in the context of negotiations. So as I've said in every lesson, I will always be focusing on cultural sensitivity because we are all joined together from all around the world and we have to make sure we respect each other. So, Ali, no. So the students are muted because of high volumes. It would be very distracting if you could hear multiple voices on the webinar. So you can hear my voice, and then, of course, you can interact with me in the question box, and I will answer as many questions as I can that are related to the lesson, and any of the practical issues, again, you can ask me at the end in the bonus Q&A session. And, of course, if there's some of your questions will be answered by the fantastic support team as well. So, again, just type into the question box, and they'll do their very best and myself to answer your questions. And if there's still a question you feel hasn't been answered, of course, just drop us an email. Okay, so, and as usual, we built on our business English terminology and just emphasized the pronunciation as well. Okay, so today's lesson. So, you learn formal English for business writing skills. Now, of course, the fundamentals of formal English writing are obviously similar across the board for, any type of formal writing, but obviously there are specific skills for English for business. So we'll be looking at the format or structure of English for business writing. We'll study stylistic conventions. In other words, the style, just in simple terms, the style, that the factors that are important for that. We'll also be looking at how to connect or link your ideas in the paragraphs. So using words called connectors or linking devices. So they are extremely useful in formal English for business writing. Now, of course, when you move on to the advanced course, part 2 of the diploma, you will get the opportunity to practice everything from the foundation course. So it's really critical to move on to that advanced diploma to get to practice everything we've learned here and put the language into practice as well. So to improve yourself as a professional, your English for business, and your career and your life. Okay, so we'll learn how to structure formal letters and emails, and I've included samples. In terms of the grammar, another very exciting part, relative clauses, those who, whiches, wheres, and whos. So very exciting altogether. So Sally, I can see you there in the question box, so it is working. Okay, so of course I'll keep building your business English terminology and focus on pronunciation. We'll obviously have a summary and the Q&A session at the end, the bonus question and answer session. Okay, so let's get moving. Let's begin. Okay, so guys, the general structure or format of formal English for business writing. So I'm just giving you some tips on this, and then we'll get down to, the meat of it, the language, etc. that you need. So how can you structure your formal English for business writing? So what factors or aspects are important? What would you say are the factors or aspects that are important? Indeed, Dua, yeah. I mean, of course, it depends. Greetings would be for letters and emails. Be clear, absolutely. Absolutely, you need to have like an introduction, a middle, and an end. Very good. The grammar, absolutely, yeah. The correct vocabulary, terminology. Okay, be objective, Ahmed, and that's very important. You'll see in the next lesson in reports and proposals. Very good. Spelling, yes, Mohammed, indeed. Be short and concise. Yeah, Riyam, spelling, absolutely. Amir, simple sentences, yeah. Yeah, you want to keep it short and concise. Sad, correct spelling, indeed. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, Muada, to be specific and to the point and don't talk about issues that are unconnected. Yeah, clear language, Naba, absolutely. Okay, so, of course, the introduction is always important. Your main body, that is the middle of any piece of formal writing. So guys, every piece of formal writing should have a similar structure, whatever it is in English. With introduction, the main body or the middle part, and your conclusion. That is the skeleton or the base for all formal writing and, of course, English for business writing. So it's a good idea to brainstorm your ideas, to gather your main ideas and thoughts and put them on paper so that you're going to write logically and clearly and coherently, and everything's going to flow in a sequence. So that's very important. Of course, as well, you've got to plan your writing, and that's connected to brainstorming your ideas or thinking of ideas. Yes, someone has mentioned punctuation. So yeah, several of you actually, yeah, exactly. Gassan, yeah, general to specific. That's very true, yeah. Punctuation, sad, yeah. Be clear and coherent. So coherent, you want to be logical and that everything flows or connects and has a sequence. Connect your ideas using connectors or linking devices, and we will be looking at them later in the webinar. And just now, guys, this is important as well for academic writing. So you have an idea. So imagine as well if you were doing something formal as a student. You have your idea, you explain it, you give an example, and if necessary, you develop the idea more. So it's all very logical, step by step. Now, Masood, you're asking me about references. That would be, you would need to reference in an academic context. So let's say you're writing a thesis, for your degree or whatever, a master's. Then you have to use the referencing system that is required by your department. It all depends. I mean, sometimes too, as a professional, you may need to reference as well, and in terms of intellectual property and stuff, it can be important. Okay, Dua, absolutely, rereading is important. Yeah, and Mohammed, you'd have a bibliography if you were referencing, indeed, yeah. So rereading or proofreading or checking, again, that is absolutely important. Okay, so don't forget the paragraphs, guys. I remember even too when I was in school and the teacher would always tell you, guys, separate the paragraphs. You don't just put everything together. It has to look nice as well, and every point has to be in a separate paragraph. And it's also easier for the reader. Of course, guys, most of us now write on computers, on tablets, on our phones. So there's no excuse. Use the spell check. Go crazy on the spell check and the grammar. Use technological tools. And of course, self-edit. And several of you have said that already. It looks bad, particularly as a professional. And in terms of your English for business, You want to make sure that it's as good as it can be. And that's a question of practice. And particularly if many of you, if it's not your first language, you know, it's just good to make that extra bit of effort. It says a lot about you, or it will do as a professional. So just keep checking, and it's going to get easier every time. Nasir, absolutely. Each paragraph should talk about a main idea and maybe something connected with that, and supporting details. Spot on. Okay, now just there, a couple of maybe new words for you. So the main body is the middle part of the writing. Coherent, you know, is where it could be logical and it all connects and flows. And to brainstorm is to think about and write down your ideas. Okay, so stylistic conventions. Now, can anyone give me a synonym or another word for conventions? What do you think another word for conventions is? Yes, excellent. Practices, yes. Yes, so it's basically the practices that you use when you're talking about style. So that's what it is in simple terms. So we're looking at the style of writing in simple terms. So, what is important regarding stylistic conventions in formal English for business writing? So what do you think is important? Absolutely, Dua. Yes, you need to be consistent so that it all flows and makes sense and that you follow a pattern or it's exactly consistent. Very good. Yeah, the type of writing, exactly. So is it descriptive? Is it argumentative? Is it formal? Very good. Yeah. And also the type of English. Very good. British or American. Excellent. So just notice there, of course, stylistic is the adjective. Okay. And style is the noun. So as I said, just be clear, guys. Are you using British or American English? So whichever one you use, make sure you're consistent. You use it all the time in your writing. Don't mix the two. Which of these words are British English and which are American English? Okay, so organize with an S and Z, and favor with a U and without the U. So which is which? Yeah, so the British words are organized with an S and favor with a U, and the American words are organized with a Z and favor without the U. Absolutely, Haider. Yeah, you want to try and type without making mistakes. Okay, so guys, the register is formal. And what I mean by register, that means the language you're using, the tone of language. Are you using formal language or are you using informal language? Now, of course, when we're talking about English for business, we're talking about formal language. So that's pretty straightforward. Again, many of you have said it, spelling is important. You might think it's little, but it makes a big difference to your writing as well. Punctuation, and we're going to be looking at that in the next lesson. And as I said, the type of writing. So you want to be clear. Is it an essay? Is it an article? Is it a report? Is it a letter? Is it an email? Because that dictates how you write or the way you write. So logically, you know, there's a way to write for every type of writing. And of course, is it for business? Now, of course, the particular style or type of language. So argumentative. So are you trying to argue something? Are you trying to persuade or convince somebody? Do you really want somebody to do something or to buy a product? So persuasive. Or is it descriptive? So argumentative, persuasive, descriptive. And of course, they are adjectives or nouns. Yes, adjectives, because of the suffix IVE. Indeed, Haider, it depends on who you're talking to. Absolutely, yep. So another word for argumentative is opinionated. So it will be writing full of opinions. Persuasive, to make someone want something. Okay. So guys, getting more and more into the deeper part of the webinar. So this is very important to connectors and linking devices. So some of these you might recognize, some of them you may not. Don't worry about it. There's going to be a lot of them. So it's going to take practice. So you'll need to look at the webinars again and practice. And of course, move on to the advanced diploma where you really get to practice them. Okay, so what I've done, guys, I've split them up into different sections that are logical as well. So you'll see how I've done it to make it a bit easier. So what is their function? So what's the function of a connector or linking device? Absolutely. Evelina, Dua, yeah, to connect your ideas, absolutely. Yeah, Nasir, yeah, to provide consistency, sure. Mohammed, to connect your words. Riyam, absolutely, to communicate essentially better. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so they sequence or link your ideas and create structure to your ideas in the paragraphs to make them more logical. They also help introduce a new point and guide the reader through your writing. Okay, so they link your ideas. Yeah, Hassan, absolutely. Okay, so if we want to sequence the ideas so that they logically connect or follow, or we want to add additional information, these are some useful connectors or linking devices. So, of course, you probably know these. So, firstly and secondly, now, what does the ly tell you about the word? The fact that it ends in ly. Adverb, very good. Yeah, so typically a word ending in ly is an adverb. Now, they are typically used in British English. Sometimes Americans favor first and second. Now, I've always used firstly and secondly because we often use, we predominantly use British English anyway in Ireland and the rest of Europe. But, you know, the Americans sometimes write it like that, first and second. Okay, so when we're talking about additional information, so furthermore, moreover, in addition, and additionally, they're all very useful. Now, also is more informal, okay? Now, just again, if we're adding in some final ideas or thoughts, we would use words like finally, lastly, in conclusion, to sum up, and in summary. Okay, so all very useful terminology or words. So guys, which of these sentences is incorrect? Okay, so firstly, this meeting is very important. Thirdly, the agenda is long. Firstly, this meeting is very important. Secondly, the agenda is long. Firstly, this meeting is very important. Moreover, the agenda is long. So yeah, exactly, number one. So firstly, this meeting is very important. Thirdly, the agenda is long. So it's not logical because it should be either secondly, moreover, or like next, essentially. Okay, so moving on to the next part. So let's say we want to create contrast. So we've got opposing or different ideas. Indeed, Yariza, but that would be more informal. However, that's a nice little word to start a sentence. However, and indeed, as several of you have said, but it's more informal and very, very typical in writing. Another one you might often see, on the one hand, on the other hand. So that's quite typical too when you're trying to show contrasting or opposing points. Okay, so these are also a few others. Although, even though, which is stronger, it emphasizes a point, it highlights it, it makes it stronger. And though, but that's more informal. Now, if you've met an Irish person or Irish people, you might notice that at the end of their sentences, they often go, though. So I went here, though. I like that, though. I don't know, though. Now, it doesn't really serve a purpose. Irish people just tend to use it as a crutch word or a helping word, you know, to join their sentences. Like the way people might go, like, oh my God, like, oh my God, like this. So, though, the Irish are though. So it doesn't sound, in terms of English for business, it's not something you want to have at the end of a sentence. So although and even though are really the better ones to use for English for business. I'm just giving you the alternative that is more informal, that you might see, of course, in writing. So it's very informal. Okay, so whereas. Now, whereas again is very informal. It's like on the other hand. Instead of, that means it's like rather than. So you're like, I'd like coffee instead of tea. Despite the fact that, despite and in spite of, they are like even though as well. Okay, so they create contrast. And they're again quite formal. So just to show you the pattern with these. So despite the fact that, and a subject and verb come after this. Despite is used with the verb ing, and in spite of also takes the gerund or the ing form. Okay, so despite the fact that he changed his way of working, despite changing his way of working, in spite of changing his way of working. Okay, so they're very similar. They're just alternative ways to say the same thing. Okay. Now, so you say despite the fact that with a subject or noun, okay? So despite would take the ing form. Because you can't say despite, well, it depends on the sentence as well, like despite John having a better job. It could be indeed in some contexts, yeah. Okay, so which of these sentences is wrong? So, although he worked hard, he never reached the company's targets. Now, a few people have asked me about using though. You could actually put though at the start of that sentence, but it would be much more informal. Though he worked hard, he never reached the company's targets. But although is more formal and more correct English. Despite the fact that he worked hard, he never reached the company's targets. He worked hard, however, he never reached the company's targets. He worked hard, but he never reached the company's targets. Instead of he worked hard, he never reached the company's targets. So which of those is wrong? Exactly, the fifth one. It doesn't make sense instead of he worked hard. So all of the others are correct. So with although, despite the fact that, however, and but. So they're all quite similar in what they're trying to express. Okay, so very good. Okay, so even more. Guys, we're going crazy tonight with the language. So now if I want to create comparison, I want to compare different ideas or items. So, in comparison to or with. So you see both of these forms. Sometimes the American English favors to, and the British English, you'll see both prepositions depending on the context. Probably in comparison to is a little bit more frequently used, but both are acceptable, are used. And sometimes it might depend on the context, which one is actually more correct. Okay, similarly or similar to, as and like, they can be used for comparison as well. Now, if you want to reintroduce an idea, you can say, or you want to talk about something relating to something else, regarding, concerning, as regards something in particular, in relation to our discussion. So you're talking about something that maybe you've previously mentioned, in connection with, in consideration of. So there's lots of choices with that, yeah? In reference to, with reference to, yeah. With regard to, in regard to, with reference to, in reference to, with respect to, in respect to. So there's loads of alternatives, guys, for this. So they're very typical at the start of emails and letters, as we'll see later in the examples. Okay, so as I say, I have examples for these in the formal letter and email. Okay, so are any of these sentences incorrect or wrong? In comparison to last year's profits, the company is performing well. The company is performing well like it did last year. The company is performing well as it did last year. The company is performing well similar to last year. So are any of those wrong? Or do they all sound okay? Exactly. None of them are wrong, okay? So they are all correct. They are all different ways to express something similar. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of the section on connectors and linking devices. So you're all doing very well. A lot of information. So I definitely advise you to check the recordings to go back over this, and then you'll get practice on the advanced diploma. So we're talking about cause and effect. So something happens and it's the result or the consequence of it. What kind of expressions would be useful for this? So you've probably seen some of these before. Absolutely, Eureka, so and as a result of. Absolutely. So therefore is quite typical. Thus and hence. Now, therefore is more typical than thus or hence, but they all mean the same thing. And in fact, you know, a simplification of that would be so, but so is more informal. Now, when I learned about, you know, formal writing in school, we were always told to never put so at the start of a sentence. But things have changed and it has creeped into the English language. I've even seen it in Cambridge books and stuff. So I would actually avoid putting so at the start of a sentence. It's like but. I would only put it in the middle of a sentence. So and but really should be in the middle of a sentence. But you will see now in newspapers, journalism, and it's creeping into writing. But really, best practice, put it in the middle. And, you know, if you're being very formal, therefore, thus, and hence. Makes the writing very logical. So, because of. Now, that's a little bit more informal than, of course, therefore. Absolutely. White flower. So, he didn't study well, therefore, he got a low mark. So, you just put a comma in the middle of that sentence to separate it. But that's a good example. Since and as, they can also be used. And again, they're more informal than therefore, thus, and hence. Now, a few of you have mentioned, so Eureka, you mentioned in the question box, as a result of, or as a result, as a consequence, or as a consequence of, consequently, and due to. So they are all possibilities, or they could be used interchangeably or in the same way. So which of these sentences is incorrect? The company is expanding, therefore it needs to hire more employees. The company is expanding, consequently it needs to hire more employees. The company is expanding, thus it needs to hire more employees. The company is expanding because it needs to hire more employees. So which of those is wrong? Exactly, number 4. So that doesn't make sense. The other 3 sentences do make sense. Cause and effect. This one isn't logical. So very good. Okay, so again, I promise we are moving forward in terms of this towards the end of it. Okay, so if I want to give examples or explanations, these are the kinds of expressions that can be very, very useful. So, for example, e.g. Now, e.g. comes from Latin, and it's the same as for example. For instance, so maybe you don't want to keep repeating the same expression, so it's nice to have a few alternatives or possibilities. You might also use such as or like. That is. Now, that is used for explanation. So you say something and you go, that is, and you explain it. Or i.e. That also comes from Latin, and it's another way to say that is. In other words. And as well as, Abir, yes, for an example. Absolutely, you could say that. Okay, in this respect, in this regard, in this case or instance. So again, you're talking about particular or specific examples or cases. As shown by, as illustrated by, or as presented by. So nice few variations there. Because as I already said at the start of the course, a lot of students, what happens is, you know, they get a good standard of English, general English, but then they become very dependent on particular grammatical constructions and vocabulary. But it's really important that you keep developing your English language skills, and particularly when we're in a more technical area like English for business. So don't be afraid to practice and to keep expanding all aspects of your English language and of course, in this case, English for Business. So that's important. So you need to be constantly connecting with the English language. You need to eat it, to breathe it, to sleep it. Alamir, absolutely, as mentioned. So mentioned. Indeed, you could use that. So Dua, you could use abbreviations, absolutely. I'm not saying every minute, but in academic writing, abbreviations are used to avoid repetition, and EG is acceptable, and it's used in academic writing as well. You know, for example, I had it in a few webinars, CEO, Chief Executive Officer. Instead of constantly repeating that term, people will often write CEO or US instead of United States. So that's perfectly acceptable. Okay, so which of these sentences is wrong? So the company is performing well as shown by increased profits. The company is performing well, for example, because of increased profits. The company is performing well, such as increased profits. The company is performing well, and factors like increased profits have made this happen. Exactly. So this one, number 3. So the company is performing well, such as increased profits. It just sounds very strange. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so we are moving towards the end of the connectors and linking devices. It's quite a chunky, meaty section. There's lots of scope there. And I'm trying to show you at each stage of writing, or in specific cases, what you could use. So let's say we're talking about things in general or specifically. We can use the following words. So in general, generally, typically, normally, in particular, particularly, in this context, in this case, in this instance. And guys, we have 2 words that sound very similar in English, and maybe even some native speakers would get confused. So what is the difference between specifically and especially? Abbas, you could use actually. Wholly naba, would be with 2 L's, or on the whole as well. Okay, so Dua, you're saying, so which one is something specific? Exactly, specifically, yeah. And especially, particularly. So specifically means for a particular purpose, and especially is particularly. Okay, so specifically is when something is for a particular purpose, and especially is another word for particularly. Okay, now you might have noticed that a lot of the words in this section are in fact adverbs. So a lot of these connectors are adverbs. Okay, again, which of these sentences is incorrect? The managers are specifically helpful in most companies. Generally, the managers are very helpful in most companies. The managers are especially helpful in most companies. The managers hired John specifically to increase sales. So which of those is wrong? Yes, so number 1, the managers are specifically helpful in most companies. It's actually are especially helpful. You can't say in that case specifically. So the managers hired John specifically to increase sales. So for that particular purpose. So the first one is wrong. So the managers are specifically are especially or particularly helpful. So the first one is wrong. Okay, so guys, we're getting a little bit more specific now in terms of English for business writing. So we're moving on to the language and conventions for formal English letter writing and emails. Okay, so guys, just some tips to remember in terms of structuring formal letters. Now, of course, many of us nowadays, we don't really write letters. That's something I very much remember when I was younger. But it's still important to know how to write letters. So, of course, at the introduction stage, you would use the following expressions for a formal letter. So, dear sir or madam. Now, that is when you don't know who you're addressing. So, it could be anyone. Or maybe you're going to insert a particular name, like dear Miss McCarthy. So Mr. is for a man. Miss is for an unmarried woman. Mrs. is for a married woman. And Ms. is for when you don't know if they're married or not. Okay, so when do we use them? As I said, Mr. for a man, Miss for an unmarried woman, Mrs. for a married woman, and Ms., the woman can be single or married. Now, they are also abbreviations, Mr., Mrs., and Ms., with the dot as well. Okay, now, again, this is super formal, to whom it may concern. That's another alternative. So in terms of pronunciation, Yariza, it's Miss and Ms. So it's like bzz, like a bug or a bee. Bzz. So Miss and Ms. So it's like Z. There's like a Z in the Ms. So Miss with an S and then Ms. I know it's strange. Okay, so don't forget your address in the top right-hand corner of the letter, and you would pop the date underneath, and you'll see all this in the example. So again, just there if you're confused, Miss, so M-I-S-S, and Ms, it sounds like it's a Z in it, the last one. Okay, so if the letter is extremely formal, you'll put the company address on the left-hand side, or again at the top of the letter. So Miriam, Mrs. is for a married woman. So Anjam, so hello is very informal. So for formal English for business writing, avoid hello. Unless you're on the telephone, of course. Okay, so I want to sign off or finish the letter. So what are the general practices or conventions with this? So yours faithfully. And of course you pop your name underneath. And that's when you don't know the name of the person you're writing to. So if you wrote to whom it may concern or dear sir, madam. So it's when you don't know the name. Now, several of you have already mentioned sincerely. There is a difference. And that's my next point. Now, guys, best regards is more typical in a formal email. Okay, so yours sincerely. So that was my next step. So guys, you're already ahead of the game, many of you. You know my next step before I've even started. Okay, so you put your name underneath, of course, but it's when you know the name of the person you're writing to. So if you have a name like Dear Mr. O'Reilly, Dear Miss McCarthy. Okay, so of course, keep the letter. Many of you said this earlier, so keep it short and clear. So Amjad, you don't need to put the date at the end because it's at the top of the letter. So Zanab, just if you're a bit confused, Miss, the first one is for an unmarried woman. Ms, the woman might be married or not. She doesn't want people to know. So Mahmoud, people use the word gents when they're going, ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome to the show. Let's say you go to some kind of performance like a circus or a theater or something. So that's when you'd say that. Sajja, I wouldn't put greetings. That's more, again, you're looking at informal emails. Folks, again, Abir, that's a very natural expression, but you wouldn't use it in English for business. No, Haydar, gentlemen, again, people often say that, but not in letters. And just be careful, guys. Madam is for a woman and sir is for a man. Okay, so guys, obviously use formal language for the letters and avoid contractions where you shorten the words. So don't use I'm, he's. You know, you need to avoid that because that's for informal language. Of course, watch your punctuation, which will be in the next lesson, and be consistent. Follow the same format, style, conventions, British English if you're using it, etc. Again, thanks would be more in an email than in a letter, Rayanne. So sire, so Mrs. exactly is for only a married lady, absolutely. Okay, so Elaf, are you asking the difference between yours faithfully and yours sincerely? Is that what you're asking me? Okay, Elaf, I think, is that okay? So the difference again, yours faithfully is when you don't know the name of the person you're writing to. But yours sincerely means when you know the name of the person you're writing to. I'm talking about when you put CEO. Okay, so guys, again, use connectors or linking devices to shape your ideas and paragraphs. Okay, so here is a sample letter. So, again, the name of the person on top, the address, the date, who they're writing to. So this manager is writing to this customer. Okay, so dear Miss Hernan, with reference to your order. So I've highlighted some of the typical expressions you could use in red. So they're talking about our order, and I'm writing to apologize for the delay in dispatching the item. Unfortunately, the specific model of the laptop which you ordered is currently out of stock. However, it should be back in stock by Monday. We expect to ship your order within the next 3 days. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you have any queries. So that's a very, a standard type of letter with the right type of language and formality. Okay, thank you for your patience while we are resolving this issue. Yours sincerely, because we know the name of the person we're writing to, and Paul O'Reilly, that's his name, okay? Now, you might put underneath manager in brackets. You can do that as well, of course, okay? And if you really want Mr., but, Paul is trying to give a more personal touch by putting Paul O'Reilly. Okay, so just there in terms of the terminology that might be new to you. Now, I have a good question there. Ibrahim, you're asking me why there's no space. I think you mean here in the paragraphs. So, when you have a space like that between paragraphs, you don't need to indent or move in 3 spaces. If you're moving in 3 spaces, there's no gap between the paragraphs. And that was typical in the past in English. So, typically people wrote everything together and they moved in 3 spaces to start a new paragraph. But when you're skipping lines, you don't have to move in. So you use one or the other. Okay, so the information on the right, that's who the letter is from. And the letter is to, okay, this lady, all right? Okay, so to dispatch means to send. Out of stock. So that means not available to buy at the moment. Now, out of stock, of course, what is it in terms of grammar? Exactly, it's a compound noun. So we looked at that last week. Okay, and absolutely, there's a hyphen in there. Absolutely, Abir, yeah. A query is like a question. And to hesitate is like, so don't hesitate, don't delay, or don't wait if you need to contact us. And of course, we've seen this before. To resolve the issue means to fix the problem. Okay, so guys, just another few typical points to keep in mind for formal emails. Now, guys, this is where these other expressions come in, like best regards, thanks, etc. And someone is asking as well, you don't really put your mobile in the letter. That's not necessarily email. That would be in a CV or, maybe in an email if they need to contact you. Now, of course, if you want them to contact you, you might write your mobile in the main body or part of the letter. Okay, so for the introduction, again, now, guys, if the email was extremely or incredibly formal, you might use Dear Sir, Madam. Or quite simply, Dear, and just insert the name. Again, if you were using Mr., Miss, Mrs., or Ms., it's very, very formal. So it's more typical to write Dear John or Dear Mr. O'Reilly. Now, again, if you know who, like in Ireland, for example, we would quite often use hi John. If you know the people that you're writing to, that is allowed in an email. It's less formal than a letter, of course. Of course, don't forget to fill in the subject field. What's your email about, so that the person's going to read it quickly. Okay, so at the end, if the email was incredibly formal, again, you would use yours faithfully or yours sincerely. But more typically, okay, people use best regards, Kind regards, regards, and thanks. Again, keep your message short and clear, so shorter than even a letter. Use formal language, and as usual, use the connectors and linking devices. Here is a quick sample. Okay, so there's the email address, english.business@showacademy.com. Subject, English for Business course details. Okay, so the date, 3rd of October 2015. Hi Jennifer, I'm writing to you regarding the English for Business course. I just wondered how the course is assessed and what will I receive at the end of the course. I would be grateful if you could answer my queries. Kind regards, Jose Fernandez. Okay, so typical email, short and sweet. Hassan, absolutely. You might attach a file. Please find attached whatever is my certificate of in English for Business. So just to answer that question, so the course, of course, is assessed with a final exam of 100 multiple choice questions, which take 2 hours, and that will be posted in week 4, and you'll get a certificate once you get over 70 in the exam. And don't forget, if someone got 68, they can do the exam again once it's in the 10-day time frame. Okay, so guys, here are another number of expressions that you could use for formal letters and emails. Okay, so I'm writing to you in relation to or regarding something. I'm writing this letter or email to inquire about or to ask about, to inform you or tell you, to apologize for, to apply for a job, and to confirm. Okay, so just to make certain. Well, Ibrahim, the date, remember when you write an email, the date is automatically embedded in the email. It's automatically there, so you don't need to worry about the date. Okay, with reference to something, I would like to clarify or explain something else. The issue or matter needs further clarification. We had that last week. It means explanation. Thank you for your email concerning our service. We aim to rectify the issue as soon as possible. So rectify means solve, rectify. I would be grateful if you could or would respond to my queries. Would it be possible to exchange the product? If you need any further information, please do not hesitate to contact me. That is a very standard sentence in a formal email or letter. If you have any queries, please do not hesitate to contact me. We look forward to hearing from you soon. We await your response. And again, it depends on the email. Now, so Hassan, you asked me about this. Please find attached for an email, enclosed for a letter, the document you require. So attached is the typical word used in an email, and enclosed is typical in a letter. Abir, yes, should you need any further information? Absolutely. Should you have any further? Yeah, that's perfect. It depends on the sentence. No, you're absolutely right. Should you need any further or should you have? Yes, both of them are acceptable depending on the context. Okay, so just a quick look at any new terminology there. With reference to Abbas, yes. But you might write, I'm referring to. So that would be the ing form. And don't forget, referring would have 2 ors. Or, E-F-E, or. Hassan, please feel free to contact me at any time. Yeah. Let me know if you have any other concerns. Yeah, that could be in a particular context, absolutely, or issues. Now, guys, this is just something to draw your attention to. There are 2 variations on the spelling of inquire. So I'm going to show you now. So to inquire about with an E, it's to ask about something or a general query or question or a particular issue. And that's typical in British English. Inquire with an I is usually for making formal investigations, but the Americans tend to favor or use that more. Now, nowadays, I mean, people use both, but inquire is definitely typical for formal investigations. And again, if you check like Cambridge Dictionary, inquire is typical for general query. Yeah, Hassan, you might request information. Indeed. Okay, so in practice, both are often used interchangeably or in the same way. So a lot of people, they're not losing sleep over this, and maybe some of the native speakers don't even know the difference. But it's always good, particularly in formal context, to know how the language works and what's the difference. Okay, so to inform is to tell you about something, to confirm or to ensure. Further clarification is like further explanation. To rectify the issues, to resolve them. To hesitate, to delay, or to wait. Queries are questions. I would be grateful, I would appreciate something. To require is to need. Okay, so guys, we're moving along very steadily. We've covered an awful lot of information, and your attention is fantastic. So we're heading towards the end of the webinar, and this is the really fun part, the grammar, which you all love as much as I do. So I've just been asked there, what's the difference between confirm and verify? So verify is another word or a synonym for to check. So if you want to verify information, you want to check it. But if you want to confirm, it's like check, but let's say I want to confirm my holiday dates. So, so sometimes they can be used in a similar context. Okay, so relative clauses. So do you recognize relative clauses? Absolutely, Hassan. Confirm is to make sure. Absolutely. So yes, exactly. So who, which, where, they're typical. Indeed, yeah. Yes, Sarah, I can see your questions. Absolutely. I can see you in the question box. Okay, so guys, there are two types of relative clauses. We have defining and non-defining relative clauses. Now, the names, in fact, they tell you a lot already about the definition of both. Okay, so we had an example from the letter. Unfortunately, the Pacific model of the laptop, which or that you ordered, is currently out of stock. So which type is the example, guys? Is that a defining or non-defining relative clause? Now, maybe you don't know. Don't worry if you don't. That's what we're going to talk about. Very good. It's a defining relative clause. So white flour, appreciate. That's the pronunciation, appreciate. Okay, so what is their function? So what, guys, what's their function? Okay, so it's to give us information about the subject or the object, okay, so in a sentence, and they can make two sentences become one longer sentence, and they're typical in formal writing. Okay, so in a relative clause, you have a relative pronoun. So who is for a person, whom is more formal for who, and it's typical with prepositions and objects. Which is for an animal or an object. That can be used instead of who and which in defining relative clauses. Where is for a place and whose is for possession. So the relative clause starts with a relative pronoun. I'm going to show you examples in a minute, and I'm going to explain the two types. So defining relative clauses, it defines the subject or the object, okay? So a defining relative clause defines the subject or the object of the sentence. There are no commas to separate the sentence because the information about the subject of or the object is really, really important. So there's no comma to separate the sentence. It defines it. That, as I said, can be used instead of who or which, but it's more informal. So example, the man who is the CEO of Shaw Academy participated in the 2012 Olympic Games. Now that's an example. So the man who is the CEO of Shaw Academy, so one of the main bosses, participated in the 2012 Olympics. So the defining clauses are very, very important. Okay, non-defining relative clauses. So guys, I just want to check there. Can everyone still hear me okay? So just type yes in the question box. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so guys, most of you can hear me. Yeah, the majority can hear me perfectly. Anyone, if you're having a problem, just check your internet connection and the sound settings on your device. So everyone Everyone else, most people are fine. So great, super. Okay, so we're almost at the end anyway, so just hang in there for another few minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes. So guys, a non-defining relative clause. So this provides additional or extra information about the subject or the object in a sentence. We use commas to separate the relative clause because we're just getting extra or additional information in the sentence that we don't need. It's not necessary. Okay, so we can't use that in non-defining relative clauses. So here's an example. Bill Gates, comma, who is the founder of Microsoft, comma, participated in the 2012 Olympic Games. Again, this is just an example. So Bill Gates, comma, who is the founder of Microsoft, comma, participated in the 2012 Olympics. So this is a non-defining relative clause because the middle part, or the relative clause, I don't need that for the sentence to make sense. If I took it out of the sentence, I could say Bill Gates participated in the 2012 Olympics. It's just extra information, and it's being separated with commas. So it's a non-defining relative clause. It's just extra information. That's it. Question. Which of these is a non-defining relative clause? Employees who work hard will be rewarded. Steve Jobs, who is the founder of Apple, was extremely creative. A company which makes a lot of profit will be successful. A good boss rewards their workers. So which one is a non-defining relative clause? Very good. Steve Jobs, comma, who was the founder of Apple, comma, was extremely creative. So that is a non-defining relative clause. So very good. Okay, so guys, we've come to basically almost towards the end of the lesson. So guys, you've been absolutely fantastic. We covered so much there. You were super, very enthusiastic, very patient, and you kept interacting all the way. So guys, you're doing great. And you know, we're like halfway through the course already. So, of course, we learned about formal English for business writing, the format, the stylistic conventions, how to connect and link your ideas with particular tools. We just examined relative clauses. And, of course, we really pushed your business English terminology and emphasized the pronunciation. So, guys, we just keep building your English for business. That's the goal, and to really help you for the advanced course where we get to practice all of this. And also to really prepare you for next week when we get into, you know, lessons 6, 7, and 8. So guys, it's really important to attend live because you get to ask questions in real time and you're going to benefit the most. So guys, contact us anytime. Obviously, we're here to help. Okay, so guys, you're probably wondering what's on the next lesson. So the next lesson is Formal English for Business Writing Part 2. So we're going to keep continuing to explore your formal English for business writing skills. We're going to explore English punctuation. We'll show you how to structure reports and proposals. So we looked at emails and letters today, and there's going to be samples as well. In terms of grammar, we're going to be going crazy. We're going to be looking at adverbs, future continuous, definite and indefinite articles, present perfect, simple. So we're just really getting down to business, guys. It's getting harder. We're getting deeper into the course. We'll also look at structuring presentations and more business English for terminology, and obviously keep emphasizing the pronunciation. So guys, if you attend all the lessons live, you're just going to keep building your English for business. So use the recordings as revision just to check again, but attend the lessons live with me and you're going to get the maximum out of the course. So guys, don't forget, lesson 6 is a really big one next week. We're going to be announcing the winner of the lifetime membership. So that is super exciting. So you're all in with a chance for that. Don't forget, the recordings are available within 24 hours and you can log in to the Shaw Academy website in the top right-hand corner, and you'll find the recordings in your members area, along with the weekly assignments. And assignment 2 will be posted either tomorrow or Friday. So yes, so guys, a few questions coming in about the certificate. So to do the final exam, if you're not a full member, it costs €9, okay? If you're a full member, it's free, okay? So if you're not a full member, it's €9. If you are a full member, it's free. Okay, so Ahmed, next week we have lessons 5 and 6, okay? So guys, again, we're going to reveal the answer to the mystery, what the connection between Shaw Academy and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is. So again, that'll be in lesson 6. Okay, so guys, again, don't forget the next lesson. So it's part 2 of English for Business Writing. So we're going to keep further developing your formal English for business writing. We're going to explore more tools for your writing, like punctuation, keep building the grammar, keep building your English for business terminology and the pronunciation, and of course, another clue to that mystery. Again, don't forget our website, our Facebook page, our Twitter page, and the email account, english.business@shawacademy.com. And if you have a more technically oriented query, support@shawacademy.com. And don't forget the numbers are in the website. So Safa, sometimes I can't answer all the questions straight away because there's such high volumes of questions and I just need to focus on the content. So do you have any other question to answer there? I can see you now. So Nasir, there will be a link for the exam and the certificate in week 4. So Gassan, it's your first lesson. I hope you're going to be attending live for every lesson. So again, the certificate costs €9, but if you're a full member, it's free. So the final exam will be posted in week 4. So Rayan, yours truly, it's used sometimes, but not in business emails. It's really yours sincerely or yours faithfully. So Ali Mohammed, for the weekly assignments, you can do them as many times as you want. There's no time limit because it's self-automated or correcting. But the final assignment, there'll be approximately a 10-day limit. Okay, so guys, do you have any final questions? Now, I wanted to go back quickly. I think someone was confused. There was a bit of confusion. I'm just going to go back. So the last lesson will be on the Shaw Academy website, so the recording. So someone was a bit confused between specifically and especially. So I'm just going to find the slide on that. So let me see there. So go back. Yeah, so there it is. Yeah, Shaw Academy will give you a certificate, absolutely. So you have to take the final exam and get over 70. Then you'll get a certificate for the Diploma in English for Business, the first part. And you can get a certificate for the advanced course, which is the next step. So again, specifically and especially look very similar, but specifically means for a particular purpose. So John was hired specifically to help employees, and especially means particularly. So I especially like chocolate, let's say. So I particularly like it. I really like it. So that is the difference between that. So Mohammed's asked me there the attendance to be in with a chance to win the lifetime membership. So it's 80% of the first lesson, the lessons before lesson 6. So make sure you keep attending. Okay, so guys, I'm just going to launch a quick poll. So I'm going to ask you how you would rate or how you feel about the content in this webinar. So 5 means excellent, 4 means very good, etc. Okay? So I'm just going to launch it now. So you're telling me how you feel about the content. So 5 means excellent, 4 means very good, etc. Okay, guys, thank you for all your wonderful feedback, and you're all fantastic. So all your feedback is greatly appreciated, and you're all fantastic students. So, Fadi, PDFs of the slides would only be available to full members, not temporary members. Okay, so any other final questions? Oh, thank you. So yeah, I mean, the staff are absolutely wonderful here. That's very nice to hear. Yeah, and all the support team are wonderful as well. Everyone is great to work with. We're just like a big happy family here at Show Academy. Okay, so in terms of resources, guys, a lot of resources are available to full members. Okay, so for temporary members, you're getting the recordings, things like assignments. Okay. So yeah, there'll be a special announcement. You're asking me about the membership. We'll have a special announcement about that in lesson 6. So again, anyone who's confused about recordings. So if you want to check the previous lessons, you need to log into the Shaw Academy website, and then you go into the members area and there's a button for the recordings. So you're logging into the top right hand corner of the website, and the recordings are in your members area, and there's like a button that says recordings there. Okay. So Sahar, you wouldn't write best and regards, you'd write best regards and then your name underneath that. Okay. So Rasha, what's your question there? I had lots of questions flooding in. They're coming in so fast I can't read them all together. So just send me your question there again, Rasha. So do you still have a question there, Rasha? So lessons 5 and 6 are next week. So again, you'll get the reminder emails about that. Okay, so again, for the final exam, you'll have about approximately 10 days to complete that, and it'll be posted at the end of week 4. My pleasure. Your feedback is great, and you're all great students as well. Mohammed, I mean, if you've missed the first few lessons, it's no problem. It's not the end of the world. You can catch up with the recordings. But make sure you attend from now every lesson. That'll really help you in the big lessons, lessons 6, 7, and 8. So, Rasha, what's your question? How? I just see the word how. Oh, okay. Well, it depends on your status on the website. So if you're not sure about that, just drop us an email, okay? And we can check for you if you're not sure about that. Okay, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've all been fantastic. I've really enjoyed lesson 4. I hope you all have as much as I have. And I can't wait until next week. We're in the halfway point, and we're heading into week 3 of the Diploma in English for Business, lessons 5 and 6. So it's getting very exciting altogether. We're really building up. We're moving steadily along. So thank you all again. And wherever you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Alaf, of course you can write to me. Yes, absolutely. And you can drop me an email. Absolutely. So Alaf, the final exam won't be posted until week 4. Okay, bye everyone. Bye. Good night.